Villagers, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Please, as for now henceforth, until dry season, there's not going to be any coconut tree. I was nearly bitten by a snake right now, today, when I went to the coconut place to record. So just bear with me. There is this brave African woman who has set AU ablaze. According to her, we were in our own continent, and some people came telling us who is a leader and who is a wrong leader in Africa. And we bought into their narrative. And today, what is the history of Libya? And when it was happening that even African leaders were willing to go and talk to Gaddafi or go to Gaddafi, these people told us that we cannot fly because they can't guarantee our security in the airspace. And NATO was in Libya. And today, after Gaddafi left, what is the history of Libya? We've seen what Libya has become today. And there are others who are telling us we need to take our security into our own hands. And the advice is, Africans don't need to sit here for people to come out from other places to force us into doing things that we are not willing to do. We should be able to decide what is wrong and what is right. We should be able to decide who is a good leader and who is a bad leader. The African leader has allowed himself for anybody at all to come in to determine what we should be doing at what time. How can people sit outside and tell us in Africa who is leading us, whether the person is good or bad?
When the attack happened in Libya and Gaddafi was being taken down, a number of African presidents said, wait, hold. We will fly into Libya and we can have some kind of diplomatic conversations. The feedback from external actors to them was, if you fly into Libyan airspace, we cannot guarantee your security. I want you to think about that for a minute, that heads of state of the African continent were told this on our continent. And ladies and gentlemen, what is Libya today?
These were heads of state, and their flight was refused. We had to negotiate until they arrived. What happened once they arrived in Libya? Gaddafi was ready to quit power. He was ready to step down. He said that to heads of state. And this brings us back to the idea of ownership. We should own our security, social and political system. Our population needs to accept that system that we are proposing, and we need to position ourselves vis-a-vis the rest of the world. When you see armored vehicles rolling in streets, what do? Do you intervene? The responsibility to protect, does it enter into force or not? I agree that intervention should be criticized, but sometimes you need to look at the facts. 14 years after the intervention in Libya, there is no government. It was possible to stop war in Libya.
African countries, people in Africa, need to use their own brain power to make a decision first, whether this country or that country is doing the right thing or the wrong thing. Don't be forced by any other country to make a choice which will not serve your fundamental interest.
So the question for Africa when it comes to multilateralism is to go beyond the demand for inclusion and look inward and talk about the demand for leverage that allows Africa to demand a seat at the table and to get it, not because we've been left out, but because of our leverage.
The world's terrorists are the United States. Look what we did to Iraq. Look what we did to Libya. Libya, the most successful country in all of Africa. The guy created the eighth wonder of the world with the way how he delivered water and turned deserts into farmland. And everybody had a house and everybody had education and healthcare. And we turned it into a failed state run by terrorists with open slave markets. Who did that? Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton did that. And they'll never have to pay a price for that. Barack Obama, the most they'll do is go, "Yep, that was a mistake."
But why did they get rid of Gaddafi?
Because he was going to start a a currency of Africa that was going to compete with the U.S. dollar and the euro. And they can't have that because the way the United States controls the world is because the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. So that's why they can put sanctions on all these countries. And so what they're doing, which they shouldn't do, they're weaponizing the U.S. dollar. And so like when countries want to trade with each other, they have to go take their currency, change it into U.S. dollars so they can trade. And it was a lot of it was based on the petrodollar, which, by the way, Saudi Arabia just quit. They didn't renew it. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
So, and all of a sudden, CBS News is starting to do news stories about how Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11. All of a sudden, 24 years later, all of a sudden, oh, you know what? Turns out there was something happened with it. And they're like, you mean 2 weeks after they decided to not renew the petrodollar? Now CBS News is allowed to talk about that and investigate it, which when I talked about it, got demonetized. But anyway, that's why, because Gaddafi was doing that. He was going to set up a currency for all of Africa, and it was going to be based on, have a gold standard. And so they're like, no, you're not.
A speech with reference to the most glowing and most moving speech address we listened to from the President of the United States yesterday, the import of which was to get us to condemn the death, the tragic death of the United States ambassador to Libya. And I'm sure we were all moved. We all agree that it was a tragic death indeed, and we condemn it. But, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, a year ago, we saw a barbaric and brutal death of the head of state of Libya, a representative of his country, a member of the African Union. That death occurred in the context in which NATO was operating supposedly in order to protect civilians. As we, in spirit, join the United States in condemning that death, shall the United States also join us in condemning that barbaric death of the head of state of Libya, Gaddafi? It was a loss, a great loss to Africa, a tragic loss to Africa, occurring in circumstances in which NATO had sought the authority of the United Nations Security Council under Chapter 7 to operate in Libya in protection of civilians who were said to be at the mercy of the government of Libya led by Colonel Gaddafi. The mission was strictly to protect civilians, but it turned out that there was a hunt, a brutal hunt of Gaddafi and his family. And Gaddafi and his family were sought NATO caught up with them. They suffered the brutal deaths that we know about, Gaddafi and some of his children. And as the United States spoke, I'm sure they were aware also that they were a NATO power, that they, alongside other NATO powers, had had the authority under Chapter 7 to operate in protection in Libya in protection of civilians. But did it turn out to be that? In a very dishonest manner, we saw Chapter 7, the authority given under Chapter 7, being used now as a weapon to rout a whole family, to commit the murders that occurred in the country. Bombs were thrown about in a callous manner, and quite a good many civilians died. Was that the protection that they had sought under Chapter 7 of the Charter? So, the death of Gaddafi must be seen as in the same tragic manner as the death of Chris Stevens. We condemn both of them.
If that person doesn't serve the interests of Yolo Popo, then they conclude that that person is bad to us. And we all will come out supporting what Yolo Popo have said without looking into it. Besides, African Union should bow its head in shame. When we needed money to stop our cars passing through Europe before we can communicate to each other, if Gaddafi was a bad leader, would he be able to raise over 400 whatever and the rest of the 53 only brought 100? Yet the African leader forgot to see the good things that Libya was receiving under the presidency of Muammar Gaddafi. Those of you who were pointing fingers at Muammar Gaddafi, what were you having to show to your people? Was Muammar Gaddafi a dictator? And the Libyans couldn't see it? And somebody has to sit outside of Africa to tell you, the African leaders, that this leader among you is bad? Have we seen what is happening in Libya, the narrative today? What is the fate of Libya today? Those of you who sang the songs with the oppressor, Yolo Popo, to put Libya into a mess, what have you done to support Libya now that Gaddafi is no more? And all the things that Muammar Gaddafi was able to give to the Libyans under his leadership, which among you as a leader have been in power and is able to do what Gaddafi did? And even Yolo Popo, which of their leaders have ever achieved quarter of what Muammar Gaddafi did in this world? Their leaders who are in power, look at Togo, look at Cameroon, look at Ivory Coast, but simply because Yolo Popo is getting what he wants, they are not tagging them as bad leaders. Yet their citizens are always talking about the bad leadership, the poverty rates of these countries. They are not happy with them. But because Yolo Popo hasn't pointed out that these ones are bad, you are mute, African leader. Look at Foyasungbe Yadama, what he's doing, changing the constitution so that he can stay in power for all that we know until he dies like his father. How will people respect you and respect the dark skin when people come into the continent and force our leaders to be doing things that will please them? Why must you be scared of people that are depending on us? Must people come here to give us security? Can't we provide our own security for our own selves? Are we children that we must stay here for people to always come and be regulating us? And whatever they claim they are coming to do here, we know very well that it is not in the interest of the African. They always come portraying and telling us their interest first. And that is what they always do on the continent. But you, the African Union, is always quiet and supporting everything that they do. Must you sit down for a foreigner to come and tell you that you don't have to allow yourself to be forced to do things that are not right and what you do not want to do? The leaders like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso that are rising, doing everything possible to give the African freedom, AU is quick in putting sanctions on them. But the ones that are putting the continent backwards, you are hailing them because Yellow Popo says so. And after that, you expect them to respect the dark skin. It is not possible. It is only African continent that people say to be regulating. Other people are not allowing them to do the same. Why do we have to allow them when we have all the mineral resources, the riches that we can use to take care of ourselves? But you give them to these people, Yellow Popo, for free. Then after that, you go and be begging them. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. It is we, the youth, that can fight for this revolution and the freedom that we are looking for. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world and in Africa.